What is up, guys? I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're covering some more r/am I the butthole. If you'd like to skip the initial waffle, timestamps are in the description and along the timeline below, but if you are new here, please consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that notification bell too, as it really does help out this channel and I cannot express that enough. And I just want to say a huge thank you as always for everything you do for me. It really does mean the world, and I know you hear it over and over again, but I genuinely do mean it. And I get some people could see this as sort of like beggy behavior, but I really don't mean it like that. I'm just genuinely thankful for everything you do, and I just cannot not say thank you, if that makes sense. Anyway, with that being said, let's just crack on with today's stories. Much love, guys. Now, our first story comes from a throwaway account. Am I the arsehole for lying in my therapy sessions because I knew my mum was eavesdropping? So I, female 18, live at home with my mum, dad and siblings. With past events, I've started seeing my therapist again. My mum is kind of controlling and hates that she hasn't been able to sit in my doctor's visits, therapy sessions since I was 16. With that being said, me announcing I'm seeing my therapist again but through video calls, my mum has been trying to find ways to destroy my electronics, so I'm forced not to see a therapist. The last 2 months I've noticed anything I mentioned in my therapy sessions she would suddenly bring up in conversations. For example, I talked to my therapist about being depressed and missing my best friend because I cannot function without her. She's not dead, I just haven't seen her in person since May last year. And in the middle of my dad and I talking about online games, she asked me if I was depressed and if I missed my best friend. Coincidence? Maybe, but in case that wasn't enough proof, here's another example. I was talking to my therapist about an old friend from camp finding me on social media and getting in contact with me, and that same day my mum asked me if I've talked to any old friends from camp lately. I finally realised I wasn't overreacting and she was in fact listening on my sessions. So I told my therapist about my suspicions, and with her permission, during our last meet I started spewing out as many sinful lies as I could. Basically saying things like I was having sex with multiple men from work, that I'd been doing drugs, I said I thought I was pregnant and didn't know who the father could be. You get the picture. The rest of the day my mum was angry and throwing things around. Finally during dinner she broke and started calling me names and expressing how disappointed she was in me and how I've turned into such a disgusting person. I asked how she could have known, as I've only told my therapist, which forced her to come clean on listening in. Only after she admitted it, I came clean about lying about the whole thing. My dad said I shouldn't have put her in such a position to believe I'm doing any of which I said. My siblings agreed and said I should have just confronted her about the eavesdropping, but confronting my mother would result in me being told I'm overreacting. Am I the arsehole for misleading her? I want to add a few things. I cannot move out because there's nowhere I can go and I'm flat broke, but I'm saving. There's nowhere else I can have the sessions but in my room, and I don't have any extra electronics to play because it's usually too loud and any quieter would be useless. Now let's start off with, this is going to be a not the arsehole situation because, you know, fair play for your therapist for going along with this, by the way, as well, but your mum, that's disgusting behaviour. You're trying to seek help by going to therapy and she's eavesdropping in on you and trying to get involved in the conversation, bringing these up with you when, you know, it's a very private issue just between you and your therapist. And as we always say with this kind of thing, your mum is obviously clearly crossing major boundaries here. So I think this is going to sound very Reddit, but the sooner you can get out of there, the better, because she obviously doesn't respect those boundaries. But let's see what some of the comments say. Elvish Foot says, not the arsehole, lol. Kudos to the therapist for playing along. Hope she gave you an advice on how to stop your mum listening in though. And Safety Third says, not the arsehole, your mum is crossing major boundaries. Your dad is enabling her. Hope you can find a way to restore your therapy sessions properly. And Il Scallion says, not the arsehole, that therapist is a good one. Your mum is too nosy and it's none of her business. Maybe play some music or leave the TV so there's background noise and your mum can't hear you. I wish you the best of luck and positive vibes. An Aggravating Wild says, not the arsehole, eavesdropping on your therapy is disgusting violation of your privacy. You needed proof and you got it, but realistically, your dad and siblings are your mother's flying monkeys, and it's always going to be easier for them to back her up. And Not Dead Yet 90 says, not the arsehole, unless you invite your mother into your sessions, that she has no place in listening to what you're saying. I personally would have gone the blame everything wrong in my life squarely on the mother with a good sprinkling of BS as well, but I'm definitely a bastard. She sounds awfully controlling. I hope she learns to mind her own business and grows up. I love it when people say, I am a bastard. Now I turn this one to you guys. How would you have handled that situation? You know, she can't move out at this current moment. How could you deal with it in the future? Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. And our next story comes from Son in School. Am I the arsehole for reminding my ex she has no say in where my son goes to school? A little background info. My ex and I broke up when she got pregnant with my son Vincent because she left out one tiny little detail during our time together. She was married with kids. She and her husband almost divorced. I fought to be in my son's life and got sole custody in the end. My ex still has visitation and Vincent has met his other 4 half siblings who are around the same age as him. Vincent just turned 5 and I started thinking about elementary school next year. A few of my friends' kids and my sister's kids all go to the same private school that starts from pre-K to high school. Honestly, I've heard so many good things about this place. It's not strict like many other private schools around here. The classes are small, the teachers are very attentive. My nephews have been there for years and they love it. I've been there before for school events too. It seems like a wonderful community and I feel like my son would benefit a lot coming here. When my ex came to see Vincent, I mentioned the school and she got very defensive. She said she didn't like the idea of him going to a private school and there's nothing wrong with public. Which I agree, I grew up going to public schools, however this place would be very beneficial for him and I told her as such. The more info I gave her, the more pissed off she seemed to get. Finally she said she doesn't want him going there because she really wanted Vincent to go to the same school as his half siblings and sending him somewhere separate would mean they spend less time together. We started arguing. She was set on him not going there and I eventually told her I'm the one who gets to make those decisions, so she has no say in any of this and I'm only telling her as a courtesy. She got really quiet and started crying. She said I didn't need to rub it in her face and she's only thinking about Vincent spending less time with her side of the family if he goes to a different school. She called me some very unkind names and left. I understand she wants him to be closer to her other kids, but I don't understand why that should cost him having a better education. But I am wondering if maybe I went a little too far, throwing the custody arrangement in her face. Don't know if that was the right call to say those things and reminded her she has no control in what happens in his life. Am I the arsehole? Now I'm not sure if this is an ignorant thing to say in this case, but you know, OP is the guardian, they got sole custody of the child so they get to make the decisions, and I don't think any of the decisions you were making in this story are bad ones, they all sound good to me. I'm not sure if I was in that situation I'd want my child to be going with, you know, their half siblings. I think it sounds like a bit of a disaster zone if you ask me. You know, children around them will be inquisitive to the different surnames and things like this, so I think it would be a bit of a disaster. And you are doing totally the right thing in this situation, in my opinion, so not the arsehole. But let's check out some of the comments to see what they say. Chew My Fudge says, not the arsehole, the world doesn't revolve around what she wants. Seems like your ex never learned that lesson since her infidelity. Your son wants to go to that private school, then that's all you really need to know. It's not like he will never see his half siblings or something. Also, have a good education will let him live in comfort. Not the fact that how close or not he may be with your ex's kids. And Jackberry Sparkle says not the arsehole. Also, it could be awful for him, as no doubt the story of him being a child of an affair would come out since the siblings go to the same school. No kid deserves that kind of gossip going on if it can be avoided. And Modzakomi says not the arsehole, knowing the circumstances of the situation, the kids are all probably better in different schools anyway. I'm not sure what La La Land she lives in, that she thinks everything will just be so cherry when the school moms get wind of this. Wait till the day he has to draw his family tree. It happened to my niece who I raise. Her teacher told everyone her parents were drug addicts, so I raised her. This was kinda, by the way. The custody arrangement reiterates and sets precedent that this is your decision. This is tough love, but better to implement it now. I did the same with my niece's parents. Sorry, but fucking up so bad gives you zero say and zero credibility. Also, how does someone with 4 kids have time for an affair? Crazy times. Now our next story is from Kermit the Fraud. Am I the arsehole for refusing to give my ex her mother's ashes? So I get the title sounds like an immediate yes, but hear me out. I grew up in a town in NSW, I'm assuming that's New South Wales, and met a girl we'd call Emily in primary school. We instantly became friends, and because of her rough home life, I was at her house constantly and her family became like a second family to me. I was there when her dad died and when her little sister Carol was born. I wasn't in the room, lol. I got on especially well with her mother, Greta, since I never really had one. Toward the end of high school, me and Emily started dating and decided to get married when we were both 20. However, we soon found out that we wanted different things in life. Emily wanted to go out from our small town and make a name for herself, whereas I wanted to live here, work, and have a simple life. We eventually decided to get divorced and Emily moved away. I stayed friends with Greta and visited often, since she lived alone and we had a weekly family game night. However, Emily became more and more harder to contact and didn't visit nearly as much as she said she was going to. Greta eventually got breast cancer and went through 2 rounds of chemo before dying from it. This went on for a year and a half and Emily visited 3 times. She lived 3 hours away, but still. When she died, I immediately tried calling her and like usual she ignored the call. Even answered once or twice just to hang up. Her sister had to break the news, and even then, she wouldn't answer until the 7th call, which she answered by screaming, "What?" I also want to point out, because I feel it's important, that there were no COVID travel restrictions at this time. Nothing was stopping her from coming. So we flew her down for the funeral, and we all went to the ceremony. It was hard for me, and I spent the whole time holding Carol, as she was hysterical. I gave a eulogy and so did Carol, but had to stop halfway through because it was too much. We then went to hear the will get read. Greta left the girls the home and its contents, which Emily agreed to just to give Carol, and I was surprised because Greta bought a used school bus off her uncle in Broken Hill and left it to me in the will, as I always talked about converting one into an RV. He had even driven it down for me and was at my house right now. Then came the big surprise. I was left Greta's ashes. Emily freaked out and said that it should go to her, since I wasn't even part of the family. I disagreed. I'd been around way more than her and had helped Greta through her recovery, as well as everything else. Carol took my side and Emily stormed out. Me and Carol decided to spread her ashes in the river, which was her favourite place in town, as she walked along it with her dog. We told Emily, but she just went back to the house and refused to be a part of it. We decided to wait for her and told her that she has a year to change her mind, and we're just going to spread them after that. I'm pretty confident that I've done the right thing, but I have a bad feeling in my gut about it all. Am I the arsehole? You know, we get a few stories about wills and people getting gifts from people in the will and stuff like that, and this is obviously a massive decision to give someone your ashes. Must have taken a lot of thinking about on Greta's part, so she's obviously very much thought this through, to not give them to her daughters, but to do this. And with all these will stories, that was the person's choice. You can't override this to give it to someone else. So you're absolutely not the arsehole in this situation. She can be upset as she likes. Greta gave these to you for a very personal reason, clearly. So absolutely not the arsehole. But let's check out some of the comments to see what they say. And Sounds Like a Duck says, not the arsehole, they are Greta's ashes and Greta herself made the choice for them to go to you. Full stop. I will add that I like that you are giving Emily some slack by giving her a year before spreading the ashes. Guilt and grief may be strongly affecting her thinking right now, and time may help her make the decision to be there. And Human Pickle 2362 says, not the arsehole, everyone grieves in their own way, but this sounds like it's about respecting Greta's wishes. She's entrusted her ashes to you to ensure she's given the best, most thoughtful send-off, which it sounds like is exactly what you're doing. Giving her time to try and make sure she can be a part of this send-off was a very considerate move. Also to point out, if it's respecting Greta's daughters at this time you're worried about, you can't respect both. Carol wants what you want and agrees it's what Greta would want. Greta entrusted you with this, maybe because she knew someone would have to be a tiebreaker, or maybe because of how much she loves you. Either way, you're doing everything you can in this situation to make sure everyone is getting consideration. I'm so sorry for your loss. You deserve to grieve too. Greta obviously considered you close family. Don't let anyone disrespect that. And Tantrums and Tiara says, no one's an arsehole here. Greta made a huge and personal choice to hand the ashes over to you. Carol has accepted this decision. If they had both been upset, I'd understand that maybe they felt weird someone else was giving her ashes, but Carol has understood and accepts the right place has been chosen to scatter the ashes, whilst Emily barely visited her mother and couldn't be bothered to answer the phone, and put down the phone on you once or twice. To be honest, giving her a year is a long time. Give her 3 months, and then come spring, it's time. Now, what do you guys think of this situation? How should it be handled? Do you think OP is being very considerate in this situation? Do you think he's given her too much time? Or do you think he should hand the ashes over to the daughters? Let us know what you guys think in the comments below. And our next story comes from Wife and Wedding. Am I the arsehole for telling my wife to get over herself, or I'll go to my son's wedding without her? It's a bit of a complicated situation right now. My wife and I got married 13 years ago. I had a son from my previous marriage who was 15 at the time, and my wife had a daughter who was also 15. The kids were already older and we never believed in pushing them to bond if they weren't interested in that. They had their own separate lives before we married, so there was no point in forcing them into something. I'm guessing you all know where this is going. 2 years ago, my son and stepdaughter, now both 28, sat us down and confessed they've been dating over a year. It was a bit strange for me hearing this, but I was respectful of their relationship. Also, it did take a while for it not to feel weird anymore. I did always consider my stepdaughter like my own, and we're very close. My wife was upset at first, but she worked it out by believing they would break up eventually. Now that they announced they're engaged and plan to have a small wedding in a couple of months, my wife is furious. All phone calls to her daughter have been my wife demanding they break up and keep telling her it's not natural. This has upset them both, and my wife declared that she's not going to their wedding. We had a huge fight because I couldn't believe she would refuse to go to her own daughter's wedding over this. It's not like this came out of nowhere. They've been in a serious relationship for years, so she's had time to get over whatever weirdness she feels about it. I finally told her that she needs to get over herself. If she refuses to go, then I will simply go without her. She's now mad at me for not having her back on this and acting like what she feels doesn't matter. My wife says she's allowed to not approve of their marriage, and as a husband she thought I would have her full support on this. So she feels in a way betrayed that I'm not taking her feelings into consideration. But it's also my son's wedding, and I would never miss it. Things are very tense and she's still telling me she's hurt by my actions, and that I would willingly go to something she's not comfortable with. I'd like to know if I'm being the arsehole for perhaps being too dismissive of my wife's feelings about this. I understand why she feels weird, but like I said, she's had time to get over it, so I don't know. And we're going to start straight away with Jenny Wegg saying not the arsehole, offer to divorce her so the kids' relationship isn't weird anymore. And a stereotype typically says not the arsehole. She's upset that two people who aren't related and don't have a sibling bond are in love and whatnot. I get how it could have been shocking a few years ago, but you said it yourself. She's had years to reconcile this instead of just living in denial. I don't want to add something that's not there, but is there a chance your wife feels like she has somehow failed to create a sibling bond and is projecting that? Either way, you should definitely support your kids in this. You mentioned she says you aren't considering her feelings, but she's not only ignoring yours, your wife is asking you to feel her feelings. That's not logical or fair. You acknowledge why she would be uncomfortable, you're even willing to participate in their lives without her. It is unfair and unreasonable for her to ask you to cut off your family because she's uncomfortable with their, not at all, questionable decision. She's for sure suited for some therapy. Maybe send her under the guise of figuring out what's wrong with the offspring. Enjoy the wedding. And Dork Queen says, not the arsehole, yes, your wife is allowed to disapprove of this relationship, but it also means that you're allowed to approve of it. Same rules for everyone. She's projecting her behaviour onto you. She doesn't care about your feelings and dismisses them since they don't agree with her. I don't fully understand the issues your wife has, to be honest. It's not natural. They aren't related in any way. They met when they were 15, old enough to make their own decisions. Now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys think of this situation and how would you deal with it? Do you think the wife is in the wrong? Do you think OP's in the wrong? Do you think no one is wrong? Let us know in the comments below. And let's have a cheeky fifth story, shall we? Because why not, right? And this story comes from Valuable Grapefruit 81. Am I the arsehole for being classist? I believe that if you can't afford to care for a dog, don't get one. For a bit of context, my friend lives in a studio apartment and hardly makes enough money to support herself. This is relevant because in August she bought a male husky puppy. The issue lies with the fact that she doesn't take this dog outside at all. Maybe if this were a small dog it would be okay, but this is a growing husky and those are notorious for needing lots of exercise to stay healthy. She keeps the dog inside because she says her area is too dangerous. I've been over to her apartment and there's a pee pad for him, a big cage and lots of dog toys. When she first got this puppy, I warned her that it may not be a good idea. I knew she wasn't exactly well off and I didn't think she could afford the cost of a dog. She insisted anyway. Now here is where I could be the arsehole. I'm a believer that if you can't take care of something, don't get it. I told her that it's cruel to get a dog, especially a husky, when you know you can't care for it. She called me a classist arsehole. She wanted a husky for her whole life, and now that she's living on her own, she said she'd get whatever dog she wants, whenever she wants. She told me that my ideation is rooted in classism, and that because I grew up in a family that was well off, I didn't know what it was like to never get things that a lot of families got, such as a dog. Now, I'm unsure. I'm wondering if my beliefs make that true. I'm always willing to learn and grow, and my intention was never to be classist at all. Now I'm seeking outside opinions because I truly don't know if this is a harmful belief to have. Thank you. Now, I'm fully with OP on this one. I'm always someone that, you know, if you can't look after it, you don't get it. Myself, personally, I would love to have a dog. I've always had a dog in our family growing up, and I've always wanted one, you know. But my life is not suited for it right now. Not because of money, I can absolutely afford a dog, but because of time. I wouldn't be able to dedicate that time to the dog, and I realised that, although we probably are going to be adopting my father's dog, you know, when everything happens and stuff. So, because I'm very much attached to that dog, I walk her whenever I go down there. Whenever I go and see her through the door, her tail is going mental. She knows it's walk time, and we go for a massive walk and stuff, and I absolutely love it. I love taking dog. It just calms my whole day down, taking dogs for walks, man. Oh, but totally lost track of the story yet again. Daydreaming about dog walking. She's a little Shih Tzu, by the way. Just so you know, her name's Poppy. Lovely dog. But Flashy Current says not the arsehole. That dog is going to have behavior problems because she's not stimulating him enough. And Opie replies, that's what I told her. She keeps him in a cage all day because he bites her. She never taught him not to nip and isn't potty trained correctly. On top of that, he destroys clothes and furniture. I've been researching dogs for about a month now because I'm worried and I feel it's only a matter of time before she gives him up. I'm willing to take the dog when that happens. And Thorpe Dongle says, not the arsehole. I don't think it's classism to think that you should look after an animal you buy. She seems like she has a chip on her shoulder. If the dog's health becomes particularly negative, I'd call a rescue service. You're completely right that it's cruel to keep a dog in a house where it isn't taken outside or properly cared for. They don't need the highest end food or anything, but a husky definitely needs a lot of exercise and a regular feeding to be healthy. If you can't provide that, then the dog needs a better home. And Not a Sniper Yet says, not the arsehole. Keeping a husky in a small apartment without any means to burn off his energy is a disaster in the making. Getting a pet means taking on responsibility towards that pet. Pets have needs, and they're not going to stop having those needs because you can't afford them. Getting a pet when you can't provide what they need is both dumb and selfish. She should have to look for a pet that does fit into her situation. And finally, Selinick says, not the arsehole. She can't just decide her wants are more important than the dog's needs. That's not classist, it's just basic decency. What is she going to do when the dog gets sick and she doesn't have any money to correctly care for it? The shelter we adopt our cats from made sure that we have the financial means before allowing us to adopt. I wish everybody would do that. Now, what would you do in this situation? Say you was OP and you saw this dog. Would you call for some sort of service to have a look at the situation? Would you keep advising her? Or would you just step back and let her crack on, you know, because it sounds like it's going to be a disaster in the making, like one of these comments said. Let us know what you would do in the comments below. Now, once again, guys, thank you for being here. If you've made it this far, I can't thank you enough. You are absolutely beautiful people for what you do. And with no exaggeration, you are literally changing my life. As I said, the end of this month, hopefully we're going into part-time YouTube, and I'm very excited, yet very nervous about it too. We'll see if my real work actually gets someone to step into my position first. They said they said they got someone lined up for it, but we shall see on that one. But I'm really excited to hopefully put some more time into the channel, do some more videos, and, you know, get involved with the community more. As I said, I want to do some live streams to talk to you guys live. We had we done a premiere. It's not completely live, but I can get involved with you guys in the chat, and I absolutely loved it. I had a great time talking to you guys, seeing your reactions live to the stories. It was a beautiful thing. But anyway, I'm talking shite. That's for the future. We're focused on the future. Thank you for being here today, guys. If you do want to support the channel, you can with the join button down below, or heading on over to Patreon. Link is in the description and you can join there. It is hugely, hugely appreciated. I cannot express that enough. And I will see you in the next one. Much love, guys.